Hey, everybody. Welcome back out. In a few moments, we're going to jump into our Mastermind Monday that we do every week, where we dive into all things sales, marketing, operations, teams, coaching, and maybe just in general, a small business.
Chances are in your business, you're going to face a bunch of problems. And for us, we have scaled from a startup to a multi-million-dollar pressure washing company. And so imagine being able to get all of our problems and our solutions right there in front of you. That's what we're going to be offering here in a moment. And number one is going to be on leadership. And if you aren't growing your leadership and holding yourself accountable for growing as an individual, chances are you're not going to be able to hold your team accountable. And if you don't hold your team accountable, you ain't going to have no team. What's another area that we're going to discuss?
Extremely likely that we jump into sales conversations. We can go over what a normal estimate looks like for us, down to the psychology of why we sell the way we sell. What else?
Yeah, and inside of that sales, you're going to learn that relationships
are the currency of life, baby.
That's right. And then probably an area that I'm going to be able to help a little bit on is inside this conversation called marketing, because ultimately where you are is what everyone sees. So you want to make sure that what everyone sees is something worth buying.
Yeah, you can sell all day long, but if you ain't got no leads, it's a little tougher.
Yeah, so we're going to teach you where the best place to generate leads from, how to get boots to boots on the ground, and also where to spend that precious dollar amount. Should it be Facebook? Should it be Google? Should it be Bing? Should it be, what are those, Angie's List?
Yeah,
Neighbor?
there's all kinds, and it's ever changing. So we kind of, since we're in an active business now, we kind of float that market with you guys.
Yeah, and then as you scale your business, you're going to have to invite some other team members onto the plane. And so we're also going to be talking about how to invite, how to develop, how to train, how to make sure that they understand what they're supposed to do in order to make the plane stay in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Brady.
I'm Joshua.
And we will see you in a minute.
Welcome to Mastermind Monday. Today we've got, man, I feel like the same intro every single time.
Hey, let's switch it up.
We've got, what's that? That's
No,
still
we've
the
done
same
that
one.
too. Yeah. So,
I don't know. I'll let you intro then.
hey, welcome out to Mastermind Monday, where we talk about $1 million problems and give you $1 million solutions. Today, we're without one of our best pilots in the company, and that's our boy Brady. He is currently, where's he at anyway?
He is in the hospital. We sent him to the hospital.
Yeah, and that's actually a true story. Him and his wife did end up in the hospital. It's kind of a tragedy. Well, not really tragedy. What's the opposite of a tragedy?
I don't know.
It's kind of it's a great story. Brady actually had a baby, not Brady, but Jennifer, and they have this massive 12, 15 pound, 30 pound boy.
30-pound baby. Let's go.
Yeah, named Rush. And so congratulations. He's with his wife today and got a little baby. But welcome out. We're glad that you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about some things that you want to know about. It's going to be scaling up your leadership. And so at the end of the day, if you want to have $1 million company, you got to get rid of minimum wage habits. And that means you've got to raise your leadership lid. And so today we're going to be talking about the very foundation of whether or not you're going to be a person worth following, if you're going to be a person that ends up reproducing other leaders in your company, or if you're going to be your own lid, meaning that what you're doing today, you're going to always be doing because you've got no one who wants to follow because of your leadership. So we're going to get into that today. Anything else you want to share with them?
Yeah, let's just jump into
we cannot jump in into it.
I'm not jumping straight in. I'm jumping into what we're going to be talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to give a quick summary, jump into the summary of today's topics, and it is ethics and integrity. Lead by example and uphold ethical standards, demonstrate integrity, honesty, and transparency in all transactions, which is going to be a good one. Accountability is the next one. Hold yourself and others accountable to their actions, commitments, and results. Foster a culture of responsibility and ensure alignment between individuals and organizational goals. The third one is we're going to be talking about resilience in the face of challenges and setbacks, maintaining a positive attitude, persevering through difficult obstacles, and motivating others during difficult times. The fourth is discussing a culture of continuous learning and personal growth, encouraging curiosity, promoting professional development, and supporting the acquisition of new skills and knowledge. Lastly, we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about encouraging a culture of innovation and creativity, foster an environment where new ideas are welcome, and experimenting in.
Hey, it's okay.
Tongue-tied here.
You know what it is? It's like we almost have a shotgun approach today when it comes to leadership. And so I'm also going to be sharing my top favorite F words. And so make sure that you stick to the very end of the show, where I believe I share the most valuable F words that you can.
Some of them are 4-lettered, I think.
Yeah, maybe not. But in order to find out what those are, you need to wait to the very end of the show. We're going to be honestly unpacking words that you need to know and add to your vocabulary, and then practice them inside of your life.
Yeah, so some good F words to use.
But as people are onboarding, make sure you do grab a pen and a piece of paper. We don't want you just to show up unless you're driving. If you're riding down the road, just grab your phone and turn it on notes. And then that way you can write everything down as you're driving. That's not a good idea.
I don't know.
All right, hey,
it depends on how talented you are.
While people are, don't do it.
Not recommending that you do it, but if you wanted to.
And so while you're grabbing your piece of paper and your pencil, because we are going to ask you some questions that you need to ask yourself in regards to your own integrity, to measure whether or not you're a leader worth following or not. And for us to also ask our own selves, like, hey, what areas are we needing to improve inside of our lives? Because we know that integrity is like the building block of trust, and trust is the building block of everything that you're going to do in life when you're no longer on this planet. Everyone that's around you or who's not around you at your funeral is going to be whether or not you have built a life of integrity or not.
Yeah, that's so good. So
as you're doing that, go ahead.
Yeah, so just go ahead and drop some questions in the chat. We're here for you guys. So if you have any specific questions that you have, go ahead and drop them in. But let's go ahead and jump into the first.
We got to find out. As people are onboarding, we need to find out what's your highlight from the weekend.
Yeah. I got a lot of highlights.
One.
I think my main highlight is we had a bonfire on Saturday night and smoked some s'mores over the fire with my niece, and it was so much fun.
Yeah. How big was the fire?
It was pretty big.
Like how big? Okay, so it was really big.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
We
I
had
had a lot of brush to burn.
we had a little fire. We had like a baby fire where we live we don't have woods now that we back up to where we can pull trees out.
Domesticated.
We have this little baby fire, but had a good time. But it's baby.
Is that your highlight?
No, it's not a highlight. My highlight is, I love my family, and Sydney ended up coming home from college, and we ended up spending some time with her. Drove down to Huntsville, Alabama. Got to watch a couple of my kids run a cross country race. Gabriel ended up PRing.
Let's go.
So super excited to just watch him and just spend time with family. So that's my highlight from this past weekend. So that's what I got. But I think now we can go ahead and jump on and see what type of questions.
So I've got permission now, right?
I think you've won the right to
have
permission.
All right. I don't want to cross any boundaries here.
Okay.
But let's nicely step into the first topic, which is ethics and integrity. Lead by example and uphold high ethical standards. Demonstrate integrity, honesty, and transparency in all interactions. I've got a story that I'd like to share with you guys. There was one time I was washing a roof, and this roof was a massive roof, huge, and you kind of had to scale it in some areas. I mean, I think it had to have been over 10,000 square feet of roof that we were cleaning. And you've got all these different peaks and chimneys. And I remember there was one portion of the roof that I knew that no one would ever see. And it was kind of hidden behind the chimney. And it was difficult to get to. And I'm thinking, no one would ever know. No one would ever know if I cleaned this spot or not. And so you know what I did?
I don't want to talk about it.
I rearranged all of my equipment and I cleaned the spot.
Yeah.
You thought I was going somewhere else with that?
That's hard to do. Like, to be honest with you, if our listeners are there and you've ever cleaned a big old roof and it's in a pitch that a customer's never going to see, the last thing you're thinking is, I'm going to move everything around to get this. And it's a little bit easy to why did you choose to clean it when you could have excused
me? That's a good question. I mean, well, first of all, we've all been in situations like that. The worst is like if you're cleaning a gutter and there's one stick at the far end of the gutter and you've just cleaned everything out and it's just this one little stick, and like you'd have to move the ladder and put it in the most awkward position to get it out. And it's like, you choose to do it because you're only as great as your last job. And the moment that you choose to be dishonest or you choose to do a job that is unsatisfactory, you're basically saying that I'm now this person that produces this product. And you know what's interesting is it seems like the biggest hurdle as it relates to making good decisions, as it relates to integrity and ethics, is it's a selfish decision. The reason why you don't want to move the ladder is because it's going to cost you more time.
I asked ChatGPT while you were here, I'd said, hey, define ethics as though you're talking to a child. And so I need that. And so this is kind of the textbook definition. It says that ethics can be explained as the rules or guidelines that help them understand what is right and wrong. It's like a set of good behavior rule that teaches kids to be kind, honest, and considerate of others. It's important for children to learn ethics to grow up as responsible and respectful individuals. And so, like, as a dad or as someone that has children, you have to first look at yourself to see whether or not you're setting the standard that you want them to follow. And it doesn't catch up with you today. It catches up with you tomorrow. And one of the most painful situations or stories that I can remember is Sydney was like 7 years old. And when she was 7, I was dirt broke. I was in ministry and made like dollars. We were still on food stamps during that time. And there was a dollar theater that I ended up taking her to. and she had her little pocketbook. And before we went to the Dollar Theater, there's a sweet little Dollar Tree that's right beside the theater. And so, I got to load up on my hot tamales and some of the different Tootsie Rolls and things like that before I go into the theater. So I go into Dollar Tree with Sydney. We grab and she's dressed up. She looks cute.
Yeah.
She's got a dress on. I'm like a godly dad. This is what my thought. I'm dating my daughter, taking her to the movies.
Right.
And then we go into the car. We drive up to we drive to the theater, and I'm like, hey, baby, can I get your pocketbook real quick? And she gives it to me, and I unzip it, and I start putting in all the different candy from the Dollar Tree in it. And then she hit me up with this question. She said, Dad, why are we putting all this candy in my pocketbook? And as I'm putting it in and she's saying that, I said, because we don't want. And I stopped in mid-sentence because what I was about to say is because we don't want them to see what we're doing. And anytime you have to cover, man, this is preached to your heart, man.
Yeah, it's hit me.
Anytime that you have to hide whatever you're doing, it's obvious we have a character issue. And to be straightforward, we all got some issues in our lives that we prefer to cover up than to bring into the light. And when we get into this idea of leadership or being transparent or being a man or a woman that will last, it's like we got to start with the behaviors that we're modeling right in front of our own children.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I believe, unless my kids say different, I believe I can't recall, this is not a Bill Clinton, I don't remember ever bringing in any snacks into the theater since that moment, because I decided I can't tell my kids to do one thing and then for me to do another.
Right.
I have to lead with integrity.
That's so good.
And it doesn't mean that I've set the standard. It means that I've been a constant work of learning to identify areas I fell in and that got to continue to be carved away.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my
It's
story.
definitely a slippery slope. Like whenever you see the stick and you choose not to move the ladder, one thing will lead to another. Like you're lowering the standard. I've done this on another job before. I'm going to do that, keep doing it. You get home, you start stealing candy or putting it into the purses. And then next thing you know, you're texting someone who's not your wife. It's like, where does it stop?
Okay. And if you're watching today, you might be like, it's not really like that. It's like that. And I don't care how young or how old, but as you get older, you end up realizing that these things really do follow you. And I remember in literally kindergarten, I stole this girl's 50-cent piece and I ended up bringing it home. It was asked, my teacher found out, and they said the following. They in front of my mom, today it's this, tomorrow it's hubcaps, the next day it's vehicles.
Oh,
and they were exactly right with the direction that I was going. Small little compromises end up making massive impact on your life over time.
Truth Seeker commented in YouTube here. He said, the way I think about it, I still have to sleep at night when I get home. I can't allow myself to cut any corners that might end up with lost sleep at night. Sleep is valuable, man.
It's so good. Hey, I got a question for you. If you're watching this right now and there's something in your heart or mind that God is speaking to you specifically, like as I'm sharing this, God's like convicting me in areas of my life that I'm like, dude, you've got to get clean before me in all things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a time of prayer just for a second, and then we'll move back into the show.
That's good.
But for me, 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. This was one of the first verses I ended up memorizing when I went from a pothead drug dealer, high school dropout into a dude who loved Jesus. Is I was like, man, if I confess it, his job is to forgive and to cleanse. I can do the confession. He can do the forgiveness and the cleansing. And so I'm just going to pray for a second. If you've got something that's inside your heart or mind that God might be convicting you over or has, I'd invite you, man, don't hide it from God. Run to God, reveal it, because it's a heavy weight until you end up bringing it to the King. And so, Father, right now, we thank you for making us. Thank you for loving us. I ask right now, man, that you remove the things inside of our lives that are unpleasing, the things that we have to hide from you, but we just fully expose the things that might be lies or things that might be in darkness or bitterness or unforgiveness or whatever that thing might be, that we can walk in freedom and in wholeness, a great F word, a freedom inside of your counsel, that we might be able to bear fruit with our lives, God. And we just thank you that we have a future that ends up bringing us into a relationship with you forever, God. And anybody that prayed that prayer, I want to encourage you, man, get connected, go to a church, find a group of people. And it's in Christ's name I pray. Everyone said,
Amen.
Amen. Man, I need that daily confessional.
So good.
Sure.
I feel like we could just keep running down that path. But before we jump into the next section, which is accountability, what are some questions that we can ask ourselves to help measure some integrity?
Yeah. So I'm about to drop. And so Truth, if you're still there, if you're watching us, man, this is like a real where the rubber meets the road as it relates to our integrity. And inside of this life of like multiplying leaders or even being a mentor to somebody else, you have to start at the very beginning of saying, am I worth reproducing? Is the way I'm living worth someone else following and living the way that I'm living? And so here's some questions. Number one, how well do I treat people from whom I can gain nothing from? And so the first question is, do you treat people who you can gain nothing from as valuable as people that you can gain something from? That's the first one. Number two is, am I transparent with others? Meaning like you don't embellish, you don't cover up, but you basically share who you are wherever you're at. There's no shame. That's an integrity question. Number three, do I role play based on the person I'm with? Like I become whoever I'm around versus I am who I am wherever I am. Number four, am I the same person when I'm in the spotlight as I am when I'm alone? Number five, do I quickly admit wrongdoing without being pressed to do so? Meaning, do I have to be rebuked to come out and to confess my wrongs?
That's good.
Or can I just go to somebody and say, hey, I was the way I treated, the way I acted, the way I responded, the way I lived was wrong. Just coming straight out without being rebuked.
It's definitely a muscle that's exercised.
And the more you do it, the better you get.
And the easier it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, and that's like, this is another leadership principle that you can go into, is we obviously see that muscles grow when they're under stress and rest. They end up becoming stronger and bigger. Well, your confession is a muscle as well. Your patience is a muscle. Things that you don't see, you can practice, and those things grow stronger over time. So it's stress plus rest equals strength, not just in muscles, but in all things inside of life. Do I have an unchanging standard for moral decisions, or do circumstances determine my choices? Do I make difficult decisions even when they have a personal cost attached to them? When I have something to say about people, do I talk to them or do I talk about them? And this is you talk about slippery slopes, man. I don't want to be around somebody that's talking about somebody else, where I almost feel like going, because we've all been around like the lunch table after church.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not talking about our sins or the message.
Talking about someone else's.
We're talking about others. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we talking about everybody else? Why don't we talk about something that produces fruit instead of talking? Like, go to that person if you've got odds with them. And lastly is this: am I accountable to at least one other person for what I think, say, and do? And so do you have somebody in your life that you go to and you say, hey, I've been thinking like this, I've been saying things like that, and I've been doing things like this, putting yourself underneath somebody that you can hold yourself accountable for? And that goes into one of our conversations today.
Yeah, that's so good. Our next topic is about accountability. Hold yourself and others accountable for their actions, commitments, and results. Foster a culture of responsibility and ensure alignment between individuals and organizational goals. What is the best way to hold people accountable, Josh?
Hold yourself accountable first, because if you're only holding other people accountable, but you're not holding yourself accountable, it's very difficult to end up checking in with somebody. And so the best way to hold someone accountable is to first go in and ask them, hey, did you see what happened in this situation? Or can you help me understand? We've had team members here that have stolen from the company. And so we go to those team members and you say, hey, can you help me understand what happened with this credit card, this transaction, what exactly?
And the new shoes.
and the new shoes.
Yeah.
And then you get to hear what they have to say. And then you can say, hey, help me understand how you got there. Will you tell me more? And you listen. Hey, can you tell me more? Hey, this makes me think, does this sound like this? And so basically you're leading them to share what just took place. And at the end of the day is you end up saying, you put it in their shoes, and then you end up asking this question with what, because they end up saying and sharing, hey, I didn't know, or hey, well, if you didn't know, then you have to look at yours. So they can say, I didn't know I couldn't purchase some new J's with the company card. And then you have to say, man, we got to put that inside the manual when we end up hiring people that, hey, you can't steal. But then you're like looking at everything. But then you say, hey, well, even if you ran a red light, but you didn't know you couldn't run a red light, you still ran the red light. What should be the consequences for this? What should the punishment be? And you can throw it into theirs. So if you don't have a 3 strikes, you're out system, you can end up asking them, hey, what should we do in this situation? And let them share, because the punishment they share might be worse than what you were wanting to go to. Right. And then you if you're a good leader, you've already kind of decided 2 or 3 outcomes that you can hope for. And you're basically driving that conversation to find out, are they going to take accountability for their actions? Then we want to keep them on the team. If they want to deny, I didn't, not take responsibility, there's only 3 things that someone can do when they are confronted with behavior. They can deny it. So if I like knock this thing over, pour it on your lap, and then you said, Josh, you just threw this on it. I'm like, I didn't do that. So you can deny it. Sure. You can be like, yo, Scott did it. Scott, pass to the buck. It wasn't me. So you can blame somebody else. Yeah. Or you can end up saying that's me. Yeah. If they have any other response than, yo, it's me, then you need to maybe think about helping them find another place.
I feel like you're preaching to me right now. I feel like not in a bad way, but I feel a little convicted about some of the things. It is difficult to hold people accountable when you're not clear on expectations and clear on your communication. And so as it relates to the 3 C's, constant, clear communication, it's not just constant communication. The clarity part is just vitally important. And so let's just say that a team member is doing something that maybe was mentioned very briefly in passing as they're showing, like, it's very difficult to hold them to a strict standard when you haven't held your own self to a standard of clear communication. And so from there, if that's the situation, maybe the conversation looks like, hey, I mentioned this in passing. I understand that it wasn't clear enough for you. How can we together find a way to make sure this doesn't happen again? And then let's make that the standard. Yeah. Bring them into the solution. And
then let me give you another thing that you can do. And one of those would be, go ahead and have chat create you an accountability form. And if you don't have another pressure washing company that's mentoring you or helping you, just go to the internet and Google or use chat and say, hey, I need an accountability form, because after the situation happens, you need to document it. You need to at least say, hey, we had this conversation in regards to this subject, and this is what's going to happen the next time this takes place. And then both parties save it, and then you give it to somebody in your company that won't lose it. Yeah. Because if you're the leader of the company, chances are you have a million things you're keeping up with. Try to find a file or somebody that can end up helping it. Then that way, the next time it happens, it's not, hey, I thought we had this conversation before. And be like, yeah, I think we did. Yeah, I don't know. Do we have any forms? And then you can look up inside your files. Yeah. You'd be like, bam, Josiah has already been warned 5 times about this situation.
About looking too good.
Yeah, looking too nice. And it's time to make things right. And we need to let him find another place. Maybe another pressure washing company. That would be a great spot. Not for you, but maybe for somebody else. I'm not speaking to you right now.
Oh man, that's so good. Something that we can all learn from. So let's jump into the next topic, and let's talk a little bit about resilience in the face of challenges and setbacks, maintaining a positive attitude, persevering through obstacles, and motivate others during difficult times. Man, welcome to owning a business.
Yeah. And I would say you shouldn't start a business if you don't have a mindset that's willing to go through adversity. And so if you've got a background where you've been abused, your parents have left you, you saw divorce, you've been beat up by loved ones, taken advantage of, you are the perfect candidate for running a business, because those who have experienced chaos knows how best to work through when chaos happens. It's a fact, man. Dudes that have gone through difficult times and ladies who've gone through difficult times, they're resilient. And you've learned how to reshape whatever you're thinking. And so now it gets into a mindset game of how you have frameworks. And there's been times where I've had a conversation with folks that have been in our network, and I'm like, dude, we are working with different frameworks. And that person said this, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, we work on a different framework. And he's like, I don't even understand what you're saying. And I'm like, when I say something and do something, this is what it means. It means I'm going to follow through and I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. And man, there's so many people in this world that you do relationships with what they say and what they do are inconsistent. Why it's so important to maybe study the folks that you invite into a relationship before you invite them in a relationship. And, you know, this goes into your idols or who you end up listening to or influencing you. It's easy to admire somebody from afar. And a lot of times you're looking for a savior from someone that's a long ways away, where you need to grow or planted. And I had that for a lot of my life. But inside this framework, you want to know, when bad things happen, do I have the ability to work the muscle to say, as it results for this bad thing happening, I'm going to make the most out of this opportunity. And so it's an opportunistic mindset over the sky is falling mindset.
Right.
And so what you say to yourself in the midst of something that happens to yourself ultimately determines what you end up doing with yourself.
That's so good. If you're just now joining us, we are talking about leadership development inside of our company, specifically as it relates to being resilient. And so if you have a story, if you experienced a moment in time where you have had to overcome a challenge, drop that in the chat. But I've got a quick story about this. And, you know, most of my leadership lessons have come from you. So thank you for being, being.
This is why you're resilient.
Yeah. Those are the hard times that we're talking about. But I've shared this story before, but there was one time where I was on a job site with Mr. Kevin Varnado. If you're watching, it was me and you, and we had this boat trailer that we converted with plywood, or you did convert it with plywood. We had water tanks on there, and we had the water filling up the water tank, and Kevin goes to check on the water level. We're cleaning this lady's home, and he steps on the trailer to look into the tank. And when he does that, it splits the trailer in half.
Yeah.
It breaks the trailer totally in half. At this time, I'm 18 years old. This is probably like the fourth job I've ever done in my life. So I do what every resilient person does, and I call my boss. I say, hey, Josh, the trailer just split in half. I don't know what to do. This lady's customer's house. We still got the house, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I'm panicking. I'm like, hair's on fire. Don't know what to do. And I remember you pulling up, and you were walking down the driveway just smiling. And I'm like, Josh, how can you be smiling in a time like this? The trailer's split in half. And you said, unless there's bullets flying over my head or I'm burying someone, it's not really a big issue. And so some of the key lessons that I learned inside of that experience was you took ownership. So in the 3 decisions, it wasn't like, hey, what did you do? It's not my fault that the trailer broke. You know, it was, hey, let's just take ownership over the situation. Let's get through it. Second was, you didn't give the situation more drama than it was requiring. You weren't like, oh my gosh, you're right, it is broken. Now it's like, all right, this is kind of where we're at now. Our back is against the wall. We just have to move forward and make decisions.
Yeah, if you're listening to, like, we weren't $1 million company back then. Like, this was my first boat trailer that I converted for $300. Like, This was the thing that
This was our rig.
I drove somewhere with a Honda van, grabbed it from a guy I met on Craigslist, brought it back to the house, sanded it down or pressure washed it, grabbed paint, painted the whole thing black, ended up mounting 2 water tanks, one for chemical and water tanks are cheaper than chemical tanks. So 2 free tanks, one for the chems, one for the water. I had a garden hose reel.
Yeah.
We're not talking about $400
Titan reels. Yeah.
Titan reels. We're talking about the thing that you get at Tractor Supply. And so we're talking about something that cost us everything, so my wife and I, we took out 2 $3,500 PayPal loans to make this dream a reality. And this was the situation that happened when he was 18 and you're 24 now.
25.
You're not 25.
Yes, sir. How old are you? 60?
I'm like 75.
Okay.
And so we were not rolling then. So it's important to recognize, are you in that situation? Have you spent all your money, all your resources, all your time? And you might be like, well, you don't know what I've been through, or you aren't where we are. We were where you were. We do know what it's like. But remembering that this life is not going to last forever. And things like pressure washing or baby conversations. I had worked for a church at that time, and that means we were burying people. We were talking about things that are hard to talk about around the staff table, and pressure washing is just something you work through and you solve. So I want to encourage you. If you haven't built a resilient mindset, it doesn't mean you can't build a resilient mindset. Start with baby steps. Start with encouraging yourself and setting up habits that are hard for you. Do something that you've not done before so you can start making it through things you ain't made it through before. So
yeah, it's so good. Just kind of to wrap all this up in a bow, the first couple steps of working through a difficult time or getting to a resilient mindset is, first, take ownership. Don't give the situation more drama than it's requiring. And third, prioritize and execute the next steps. And so what needs to happen is figure out what's the most important and just do it. Just do it. And you work through all these different steps. There's a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. It's got a lot of great things inside of that book. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah. And when you go through that conversation, you couldn't see how to solve the situation when you were escalated in the situation. And so when Josiah was there, they are flipping out. They look like, there was, I think, a third person that may have been helping out. So was it just 2 of you guys? There may have been, may have not.
Yeah, it was just me and emotions were high. Vision was low.
And you couldn't solve the problem. And so the first thing we realized is like, hey, it's dragging on the ground. Let's let some water out.
Right.
And when we let all the water out, it went, and so then we had this much clearance to be able to roll that thing away.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing to have your trailer break on the customer's driveway, right?
Yeah.
And then you're also wondering, why did our guys park on a hill like this?
Hey.
Oh, actually, it was like this. And so,
all the water was moved back. Yeah.
It just wasn't set up for the right. And that's why chemistry is so helpful, or not chemistry, calculus or whatever. Math is important. It's
something we don't have.
Yeah, obviously.
But yeah, so stress was high, vision was low. When vision is high, stress is low.
Yeah. And so when you're able to say, hey, what's the solve here? You're able to solve it. You can solve any problem if you're not freaking out.
Yeah. Next topic, which you are like the perfect person to talk about this topic. I don't know a better person to talk about this with, but it's discuss the culture of continuous learning and personal growth. Encourage curiosity, promote professional development, and support the acquisition of new skills and knowledge. You're the perfect guy. You champion this perfectly.
Yeah, I hate you saying that because it makes me feel so inadequate of who I am and who I desire to be. But for us, we have to have a conversation on who we desire to be. And the question is, are you currently the best version of yourself, or is there a version of yourself that you haven't met yet? And I believe at the end of my life, I'm pursuing the best version of myself because I want that to be what people remember about me. I don't want people to remember a lesser version. I want them to remember the best version, which means I constantly have to be learning and improving and applying how I'm growing and how I'm living and how I'm loving or how I'm serving, which is to talk about something makes you feel the weight of something. And so even having this conversation, I'm just more aware of how far I've got to go in order to be the person that I desire to be. One of the things that I would encourage us when it comes to like the legacy mindset, is you have to determine what people are going to say or what they remember about you when you're no longer on this planet. And in order for people to experience the version of me and you that you desire to be, is you have to first do some work and die to self. I feel like the best version of me is a dead Josh and an alive Christ.
Wow.
And so for me, it's how do I let Christ take over my mind, body, and spirit? And so I want to be pursuing that as a lifestyle. So, inside the church, they talk a lot about the spirit life, but you don't see a lot of mind and body. You're like, man, why are we only talking about whether or not we love God? Or it's like, yes, we love God. And as a result, we want to be a good steward of our mind, body, and spirit.
Now, I don't remember you always being there.
For sure.
What do you think took you from a content place inside of your personal growth and being so passionate and holding this to yourself to a high standard? What switched there?
Yeah, I would say a mirror and having children, or having a children and then having a mirror. And so when you start having children, you start seeing so many things inside yourself that aren't what you want them to be. And then when you have a mirror is another individual that inspires you to be something that you're not. So the first book that I ever read that absolutely blew my mind and convicted me was Disciplines of a Godly Man by Kent Hughes. It was a book that maybe 15 to 20 years ago, a guy who loved Jesus ended up encouraging it to me, and I started reading it. I was like, the discipline of rejection, what is that? And the idea of the discipline of rejection was like,
that doesn't sound fun.
What does the discipline of rejection mean? And it basically means this: just because it's consumable doesn't mean you should consume it.
Yeah.
And when we live in a culture where every entertainment, every social media app, every single book or every single magazine back in our day, it's like, just because it's created doesn't mean it should be consumed. And the Christian mind has to decide who it's living for, what it's reading about, what it's thinking about, because what you think about will ultimately determine what you believe, and what you believe ultimately determines what you say and do. And so I would say that book, Disciplines of a Godly Man, destroyed me as a human being. I was like, I thought I was a Christian until I read it. And I was like, I'm not dying to anything. I got saved, but I hadn't yet been really discipled. The church is so good at saving without discipling. And I started really understanding what discipleship looked like through that book. And I didn't even know Kent Hughes. I just started reading it, and it convicted me. And I ended up changing some behaviors. The next dude, man, this guy's a crusher. There's some guys out there that will absolutely destroy you. But Family Driven Faith by Vadi Bakum, man, he started preaching that it's my job to disciple my children. So I started catechizing our kids inside the house. I didn't even know what a catechize was. I was like, what's a catechism?
What is that?
It's basically simple questions and answers about the Christian faith. So number one is, who made you? It's important to know who made you.
Right.
God made me. That's it.
That didn't spark any other conversations that you didn't want to jump into yet?
Well, when you answer that question, it jumps into all.
You didn't have to explain anything else?
You go in different places than I'm going right now. But it goes into like, why did God make me? He made me to love him and to glorify him. And how do we love him? And how do we glorify him? And it's like, all of a sudden, everything that I hadn't experienced in my Christian walk, I started experiencing it. And because I wanted to reproduce and not just teach, when I say reproduce, we teach what we know, but we reproduce who we are. And I didn't want to teach my kids somebody I wasn't. I wanted to become that. And so I started my best to move that direction. So it was this awareness that who I was not the version of me that I wanted to reproduce inside of my family. And so I started getting convicted, and I started repenting and switching, and I'm still there. It's not over yet.
Wow.
But leadership begins in yourself and being transparent enough to do the hard work to start taking inventory or to examine yourself to see whether you're in or out of the faith. And so I think that's where it all starts, by having a vision for who you desire to be when you ain't here no more.
Yeah. Now, as a leader, being a person of influence, obviously, whatever you do with your life, it's going to be viewed. You live in a glass house. People watch you. People watch what you do. But how do you transfer that same kind of passion and curiosity for these personal developments to the rest of your team?
Yeah. So you attract who you are. And so I don't, back when I went to college, it was evangelism explosion. And so it was very textbook. You could end up saying, hey, when you die, do you know where you're going to go? And different things work for different people. For a guy with dyslexia and my background, that was not my formula for how to create this idea of discipleship. It was more bent on this idea of who you are ends up attracting and detracting others. And this is a piece of scripture that I would encourage anybody listening to memorize. And I'm trying to process it real quick because it's off the cuff. Help me out. Ask me that one. Oh, acknowledge. This is Proverbs 3, such a rich piece of scripture. Acknowledge the Lord in all your ways and he'll make your path straight. And so when I read that piece of scripture, I think it's like verse 6, chapter 3. When I started reading that, I was like, dude, my job is to acknowledge the Lord in all that I do, and he'll end up making my path straight. And at that time, I had friends that were drug dealers. I had friends that were crooked, and I started talking about Jesus and bringing them up everywhere. And as a result, it attracted some people, but detracted most, which set me up for a life of focus on being the person and driving the direction that I want to go. And so when you end up thinking about how do you teach this or how do you put your hands on it, you talk about whatever you're thinking about. So if you start thinking about things worth talking about, you're going to all of a sudden start inspiring other people to follow and to be who you're following and being. And Paul says, follow me as I follow the Lord. And it's like, ultimately, I got to set myself on fire. I need the Spirit of God inside my life, because if I don't, like, it wasn't about business. It wasn't about fitness. It wasn't about, at that time, it wasn't about like how much money or anything like that. It was like, how do I finish this life a godly man, husband, and father? And that's all that mattered. And so filling yourself up ultimately helps with all that. Am I saying too much?
No, that's so good. I know it's very easy to, if you're a fantasy football guy, to want to talk about fantasy football or, whatever you think about, you end up talking about. But I mean, even in Psalms chapter 1, it talks about blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. He meditates on his word day and night. And it's like, that verse is everywhere throughout the Bible. It's everywhere. Meditate on God's word day and night and you will be blessed.
Yeah. Hey, there's actually 5 habits that every successful human being does. Like if you go in, this is a common factor. And one of them is, and like the root of it is at the early in the morning, they end up having a time of prayer and meditation. Now, the secular world, they meditate too, and they're successful as a result of it. But we as Christian people who love Jesus, the first thing that we should be doing in the morning with our coffee is to be meditating. Meditating is me listening to God. Prayer is God listening to me. And we can break that down based on who you are. But this is my definition, is that my prayer is a thanksgiving and a gratitude and a request known to God. And then my meditation is me being quiet and still and listening for his voice. To do those things equals in my mind, set you up for a successful lifestyle.
So good. So to transfer the desire to learn and grow personally, it starts with you, is what you're saying. It starts 100%. With your own habits. Rolling into the next topic, which is encourage a culture of innovation and creativity.
Let me go back, because I want to give you just a quick thing. There's a book right here that I've been going through. It's by, John Maxwell's. It's about becoming a person of influence. And inside of it, he kind of shares the ingredients on how to transfer or how to encourage a company or a culture of growth. Starts with modeling, and then it moves to motivating. Once you start modeling something, you can start motivating. But like, if you were dead broke, and you're a rich man, okay? You're a rich man, okay? But if you're dead broke, the last thing I'd want to hear from you is like a great way to get rich.
Oh, right.
You're not going to motivate me on something that you haven't
I'm not good at.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but once you model it, you can then motivate others only until you motivate others can you mentor others. It's almost like the pre-qualification to be able to mentor is to be able to motivate and and you started with modeling.
Yeah.
And then the greatest goal of our life is to see this multiplication take place of what we've done with our life is now impacting the world around us.
Good.
But it all starts with modeling, motivating, mentoring, multiplying. That ends up giving you, in my mind, this opportunity to hold people accountable, to elevate people's thinking, to be able to change their patterns and their ways. And so
Can you hold up that book real quick so they can see what that looks like? It looks like a really good book that if you don't have this book or you haven't listened to it, you'll definitely want to go through it. This is kind of like we keep saying, everything rises and falls on leadership. So you'll want to definitely make note of that. So yeah, moving on to encouraging a culture of innovation and creativity.
I feel like you're the perfect person to talk about that because, like, out of anyone in the company, you're an inventor. You're a problem solver. How do you promote and how do you encourage? Because we might have team members that we've hired and they run into stumbling blocks and they're like, I don't know how to solve this problem. So how do you motivate and how do you encourage other people to be a person that thinks creatively inside of a system?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. It's not easy.
Okay.
It's not easy. There's such a delicate way to go about this because as a business, you do create standards and expectations, right? If you don't have clear standards and expectations, it's hard for people to have guardrails or boundaries based off of how they can use and execute their creativity. So if someone's creative, curious, and they take initiative, that is a recipe for abandoning any kind of standards that may have been set before to prevent something else from happening. I hope you're tracking.
I'm tracking.
And so if it's cold outside and you're about to clean a roof, you're like, oh man, I'll just use straight soap. I'll just use 12% SH on this and it'll be quick. It'll be easy. And they think they're being creative in this idea of being speed things up. Let's end it. Because if we can get this done, we can do 2 times more work. What they don't realize is they're going to end up burning all the bushes, drying out all the shingles, and moving on and not caring about what the heck they're doing. And so ideas are a baby chicken.
Okay.
And so if you've got a baby chicken and you bring it to someone, that someone can do one of 2 things with it, right?
We can step on it.
You can step on it and crush its little baby bones.
Not good.
It's not good. Or that person can incubate the chicken.
Okay. How do we incubate a chicken?
They make a safe, warm place for that idea. So you're not going to want to poke holes immediately when someone brings you an idea. That is the first way to send them to another person with all their ideas. So you want to be someone who's like, man, I love that. Let me hear more. What are your thoughts with this? Where do you want to go with this? And they've been thinking about this all day. They've been washing houses. They've been thinking about how to make this process go faster. And you're going to be like, no, that's stupid. Go back to work. You don't want to be that guy.
It's true.
You don't want to be that guy. You will crush so many chickens.
Okay.
And they'll spend time thinking about someone else's business.
Yeah, but they'll also crush their business with all their creativity and innovation.
Right. Just because someone has a baby chicken doesn't mean you should turn it into
incubate it.
Yeah. Incubate it.
How do you know when to bake or incubate a chicken?
Oh, that's bake it and eat it or incubate it.
That's
good.
Well,
but yeah, so you just definitely want to be careful because you can really discourage creativity by stomping on chickens, and you don't want to do that. Bring people into making decisions, work with them and say, yeah, that's a great idea. What are your thoughts on maybe doing this with it?
Yeah.
And so
one thing I've noticed that you do a good job of is you don't micromanage. Once we micromanage, we stifle creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that we try to be very intentional on is not micromanaging. We try to hire people that want to be creative. But what we find is a lot of team members don't want to be given the opportunity to be creative. They really just want to be told exactly what to do and how to do it and what's the most efficient way to do it. I like that too. But we also want to say, hey, it's okay to process, but implementing what you're processing before incubating it with your team
that's good,
might be what's required before you apply. And so like if you're new on a job and or you're starting a new business, before you say this is how I would do it, you may want to start by watching how other people are doing it and ask the questions, why do you do it this way? How have you learned that it's faster and more efficient? Before you change it, you got to make sure that the solution is greater than the problem that you're solving. Hello. And so that might be a little bit of
Say that one more time.
Yeah, the solution that you find has to be greater than the problem that you're solving. And so sometimes we try to solve problems that actually create greater problems through the solution. And so does that make sense?
Oh, it's so good.
Well, this was a quote that came out during, I don't even want to get into when it came out, but it came out to 2020 in regards to different things, is that there was a lot of conversations about, hey, the solution has to be greater than the problem that we're facing. And there was a lot of conversations on, hey, is this solution greater than the problem that we're currently facing?
Right.
And now, we're 3 years down the road. So that was where it came from inside the conversation.
I think it's about time that we get into what we've been waiting for.
Oh man, I'm good on this. And so, hey, listen, we're going to talk about my favorite F words now. And when I say the favorite F words, I want to share that they come from my favorite chapter of the Bible. If you were to say
Philippians, that's
a homeschool F. In case there's any homeschool
hooked on phonics.
That's homeschool F. And so if you have been waiting to hear my favorite F words, it's going to start with the book of John 15, which 15 does start with an F, right? There we go. The first one is John 15. And as you read it, the first thing you said, that if you abide in me and I in you, you're going to bear much fruit. And so the first F word, that's one of my favorite F words, is going to be fruit. And the question is this: with what you're doing with your life, are you bearing fruit with your life? And the fruit that you bear ultimately comes down to whether or not you're being faithful. The word faithful is ultimately going to determine what you do with your mind, your thoughts, your actions, your habits, all come down to this thought of, what has God given me that I can be faithful with? And some of the 4 F's that I would say that God has given you and me to determine our future is our faith. Yeah. And so where are you in your faith journey and your relationship with God? You have got to prove faithfulness inside this journey of setting yourself on fire, setting your mind, learning to reject things that don't fuel your passion. I don't watch a lot of news because I don't want to think about things that I can't control at this moment. I cannot handle every single country, every single city, every single human being on this planet, but I am called to be responsible for the community and the culture that I live in. And so I'm going to think about things that are inside of my small little community on how I can be faithful inside the midst of my faith. So your faith is the first thing that you got to ask the question on. How am I producing fruit with my faith? And it all starts with you being faithful in feeding your faith. These are good F words.
Yeah, these are fire.
Hey, thank you. You're welcome to help with these F words, by the way. Hey, and the next F is your family. And I see so many families that are inside the faith or inside of church. They think that all is good because their kids go to church or they end up doing certain behaviors. But the question is, how are you cultivating the fruit of your family with your intentional efforts? Like, are you praying with? Are you confessing? Are you forgiving? Another great F, which is maybe the root of faith, is going to be whether or not you've been forgiven, and then you have the ability to forgive others. But like inside of your own family, you've got to ask the question, how am I bearing fruit with my wife, with my husband, my spouse? How am I bearing fruit with my children? If they come second, third, fourth, fifth inside your life due to your time blocks, and the way that you find out if you really care about something is you do a time audit. Have you ever done a time audit before?
Yeah, I just got out of one.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did it look like?
It looked like me tracking every 15 minutes of my day. If you've ever done a diet journal, like you've been to the doctor, like, hey, track everything that you've eaten.
Okay.
I did that with my time, and it was brutal.
What did you discover?
I discovered a lot of wasted time.
Yeah. And so why did you do a time audit?
Because I wanted to be more productive, and I wanted to set my priorities straight. And what I recognized was it was way out of proportion, blown away. It was embarrassing. I don't want to show people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show you my time card.
Friday. Friday, we're going to talk about it. Hey, but when you get vulnerable and when you get transparent, you can end up finding freedom, which is another great F word. I'm telling you, the more you think about the F word, the more you realize
they're fantastic.
They're fantastic. They're fabulous. They're Brady's word to say freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So long story short, your family, are they high up on the chart? Are they low? I switched my calendar around this week because I learned that I ended up giving my most sacred time to 4 other people groups during the week. My most sacred time with my family is 6:30 to 7:30 because my boys are getting up, my 6-year-old and 1-year-old, and I wanted to be there to make breakfast for them, to be able to sit with them, be able to enjoy them. And then my wife, she's got to take care of 6 kids. And if I'm gone, I was gone Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at that block. And I'm like, I've got to change, all with good things. Pressure washing pastors on Monday, Better Man on Tuesday. Thursday was taking my son to a Bible study. And while I was there, I went ahead and just hung out. And then Friday was leadership development. But I'm like, I'm doing all these good behaviors at the expense of my wife having a time, and then my kids, me being there when they rise up. And so I made it determined, like, I'm going to be there when my kids rise up. I'm going to be there when they lie down. That's my responsibility as a man. Sorry to go on forever. Number 3, F, is going to be your fitness. How long are you going to live, and how well are you going to live? What age do you want to die at? I really think this is a missed F, and we think it's all about vanity, but it's really about fruitfulness and faithfulness with the body that God's given you. If you want to know whether or not you're a good steward, and I ask the question, what all has God given you that he's called you to steward? And it might be the things that we throw down our mouth. It might be the things that we exercise. If you want to change the way you think, your body, and live longer, you're going to have to work out and exercise. You can't eat whatever you want, do whatever you want to do, and think, oh, I'm just giving God glory. And then by the time you're in your 60s, you're having all these health issues. And then you become a challenge a little bit for your family because they're having to take care of you because you didn't take care of yourself. And I'm not trying to be rude or a jerk, but if you're in your 40s or in your 30s and your 20s, have vision for your future by taking care of what you currently have. Now, we can't help genetics. We can't help the events that take place, but we don't want to be contributing to the elements that ends up preventing us from our kids being able to live a life with their family because they're now taking care of us as we get older, or we end up inside of care. And then they have to financially take care of us. And I'm sharing this from a very, like, nobody talks about these things because it's taboo, but we have to be asking the question, do I have vision of myself for a future to take care of myself? It's kind of a big deal. And number 4 is your finances and your business. What do you got?
So Truth Seeker actually just commented, and he said, we just had our 6th baby in July. The family balance is the toughest for me to handle.
It is, dude. And I've got 6 kids, 21 down to 1. And you ultimately have to determine what are you going to succeed at. And if you're succeeding at the expense of the 6th, it ain't worth succeeding over. And so be just, hey, what do you got to budget? What do you got to cut off? What do you got to start eating? What do you got to start hunting and grabbing deer with an arrow or whatever you got to do to feed your family?
That's good.
Feed family.
To touch on the fitness, they say, I was chatting with a doctor the other day, and he said statistically, the lifespan here in America is the longest it's ever been, but the health span is the shortest it's ever been, which means you might live for a long time, but you might be hooked up to a bunch of stuff. You might not be surviving.
70% of Americans are going to die from heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. And these are areas that we're sensitive over. These are family members. These are people we love and care about. But if you look at the China study, if you look on like, hey, why and what is contributing to this? And I know this is a pressure washing podcast about a $1 million Mastermind Monday, but you can't enjoy $1 million if you end up using it for your health care.
You can get a really nice bed in the hospital.
Yeah. And I don't want to go there because, like, at the end of the day, it's part of our lives. We do go through tough times, but what can we do today to, if there's scales and what we do is based on, like, if it gets weighted this way or that way, I want to be contributing as much inside of the scales as I possibly can on what's going to help me be here and make a difference, make an impact as long as I can. And I may not always be able to tip the scales, but today I need to, so I can be around the longest. And then the last is finances. with what you make, are you faithful in your finances? And that's a stewardship. It's things that we've got to learn to handle over time. But anyway, these are all the F's that ultimately determine your future. And those are some of my favorite F's.
That's so good. So you've got faith, family, fitness, and finance.
Yeah, you got.
And those are all things you need to be faithful with.
Yeah, and there'll ultimately be fruit. So John 15 says, "Abide in me and you, and you're going to bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." And such branches are cut off from the vine, thrown into the fire, and burned. And so, and then he says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love each other like I have loved you." And so that's the response of how we're to live our life, so we can bear fruit in this life.
Wow, so good.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, dude, I feel like I've said too much.
This might be a roll. We might have to roll over in the next week, but I don't know. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for commenting down below, Truth Seeker. Thank you for being so involved. If you are watching this after it's live, we go live every Monday morning from 9 to 9:30, 10-ish, depending on how built out the episode is. But we really appreciate you joining us. If you would please subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. We're at like 900. So if you could help us out, that would be huge.
Yep.
Hit the like button and hit the bell notification to know when we're going live so that you don't miss us. And
yeah, hold on. Before we say peace, the thing to recognize is, like, what are we talking about here? We're not, we could have threw up a big whiteboard and said, hey, this is how you grow your business in every single way. But we're also talking about things that matter over just the business. So yes, we're talking about business, but we're also talking about things that matter, which is why you want to like, subscribe, and share. We're trying to get a message out that says what you do isn't any more important than who you are as you do. And we're trying to set up this idea that we can be ministers in the marketplace. Why not make an impact while you're making an income? And so let's not make the income, and let's not make growing a business the main thing. Let's make that a sub conversation as we're pursuing a life worth living.
Yeah. We'll get to the whiteboards eventually.
Yeah, we'll have it clear where we can be right here in front of you doing that.
Anyways, until next time.
Do we have to write backwards when we do that if it's in front?
No.
We can go like this. And
Scott can flip the image on the camera.
And until next time,
Peace.